Hey guys, it's Sign here with HobbiesofaMan once again, and today we're going to be doing another manga review. Today we're going to be looking at Chain Soldier Arc 5 Part 1. And I do want to apologize for the lack of content on the channel this past week. I've just been really busy. I've had a lot of stuff going on right before the holiday season starts, right? So Arc 5 of Chain Soldier covers the vast majority of Volume 4, which is starting from there, which would be Chapter 27. All the way through and into about halfway of volume 5, and only halfway because I only want to talk about the first half of this arc. It ends at chapter 35 leading into chapter 36, right? And so the reason I'm only doing the first half of that is because that way I can get another volume and have like a complete story for the next video without having to wait too long, right? So it's the first half of the arc, which is about 9 chapters, more or less. And again, it's written by Takahiro with art by Yuhei Takamura, who does a great job. It's published by Yen Press because Viz didn't want to publish it, more or less. That is essentially what it boils down to, as far as I understand it. It is the same thing as with Yuna and the Haunted Hot Spring. That is a Shonen Jump title that Viz did not want to publish, so another company published it instead. And that's kind of how that works, right? The demographic is shonen, and the genres here are fantasy, action, and ecchi. And it does not currently have an adaptation, although as far as I remember, one is currently coming quite soon, right? And again, the rating here is a 5 out of 5, similar to the last arc. It does what it set out to do very well, and I really enjoyed it so far. However, my total ranking for the arc might lower after I read the second half of it, right? So this is a tentative rating for the arc here. And the premise here is that the humanoid Shuki have made their move, and it's time to capture Yuki and use them for their purposes, right? So that's basically the premise here. The plotline here starts at the end of the battle from last time. Yuki gets his reward. Then we get a lot of an exposition about Yuki's sister, which is actually quite cute. I really enjoyed this aspect because it shows that Yuki and his sister had a really great relationship, and it informs us a lot about their relationship right before we get that big reveal that we kind of already had, which is that the main humanoid Shuki, is Yuki's older sister, and we get to learn about how she interacted with him and why he is the way he is, which basically has to do with the fact that his sister wanted to mold him to be kind of like the right person for her, and so he ended up having all of these skills that now help him be a hero, which is his dream ultimately, right? So yeah. And then Nei gets a ping. Apparently there's a Mato mishap where a woman ends up stranded on Mato without any help and without a Peach to save her. And so the girls deploy and they get attacked by Shuki Koko, who was actually the woman in disguise, right? So the woman was Koko in disguise, and she shows off. She has a very ditzy personality, but it's different from Shushu's, so that's pretty good. It's pretty interesting. And then Noan, or Naon, shows up, and her name is hard to say because I'm not really sure how to pronounce it properly. So hopefully when the anime comes out, I'll be much better pronouncing this name. But Noan shows up, and then Oba, and Aoba is Yuki's sister. Again, these names are kind of weird, honestly. They feel kind of old school, but I'm not really sure if that's the case or not. It's just names that I have not really seen in manga and anime all that often. But I think that's interesting because it is distinctive, right? So these 3 humanoid Shuki beat the girls, abduct Yuki, and then Yuki wakes up later, and he kind of ends up in compromising positions with Koko. Then Aoba and Naon show up. They interrupt the fun, basically, and Yuki and his sister reunite. And it's actually a pretty interesting reunion that they have here. Yuki is taken to their hidden village, which gives me Naruto vibes, but it's not really that similar, unless you kind of count like Orochimaru's village as what this is supposed to be. But it's not really. It's pretty different, but it does kind of have similar vibes to that. I find it interesting. And overall, this hidden village aspect is really, really cool. I really enjoyed this because there's a lot of lore here that gets given to us in a very fun and interesting way. And it was about time that the story developed its world building a bit, because so far we haven't really gotten too much beyond the very basics of their powers, right? And so this character development and this world building is quite good because it helps us have something besides the ecchi to latch onto, and that is very meaningful because, you know, a series without substance, as horny as it may be, it's not going to be interesting to read long term, right? So I like this. I think this was really well done. And yeah, so Yuki tries to get them to go to Kyoka, and it doesn't really work. Apparently there's a lot of anger and resentment associated with the defense force from the humanoid Shukis because of this very big, serious kind of situation that gets explained to us. And I don't really want to give away everything in the story, so I'm not going to talk about it too much, but it is a very important. Then the girls get called in. They actually ask Squad 6, Tenka's squad, to go save Yuki, and they manage to do so. Then we kind of get this arc interrupted here because there's a giant interlude recap chapter. It's actually several chapters, if I remember correctly, which I don't like personally, but I think it was actually really meaningful to do this because I think at the time of this releasing, there was kind of a mix-up with the story, and I feel like there was a situation where it was kind of changing magazines, and so the recap chapter was actually meaningful, but I'm not really sure. But I think it's good to have these sort of recaps every once in a while. Usually they're put in at the beginning of the book and not at the end of a certain volume. But overall, it still works. I think it is nice to have that recap. However, because I've been kind of binge reading this, it wasn't necessary for me. So if you're binge reading, you may be able to skip this chapter and you'll know right away because it just kind of like starts at the beginning of the story again. So yeah, be aware of that one. Then we get introduced to Naon's backstory. We get introduced to the Onoimoi agency, these like old witch ladies, basically. And this again reminds me of Root from Naruto, Danzo's group, or, you know, kind of like the medical nin from Naruto as well. So it kind of has that kind of similar vibe, like Granny Chio and stuff like that, right? So yeah, and it turns out that there's a mutation that happens to certain people when they eat Amato peach, and it can be kind of considered a bad reaction, or it might be a different reaction depending on how you call it. And so this creates or allows the manifestation of humanoid Shuki, which is what all of these characters are. So they all are human, but had a mishap happen to them, right? So yeah. Then the Squad 6 and Squad 7 attack. The Azuma twins deal with Naon, and they have a very serious fight. Shushu and Saara go against Koko, and Tenka and Kyoka, of course, go to find Yuki and end up battling Aoba. And the only fight that we get a resolution to at this point is Shushu and Sahara's versus Koko's. And overall, really good fights, really enjoyable stuff. I really like the plot line for this particular arc a lot. It's much better than the previous one, but the previous one wasn't really about plotline. It was about kind of setting things up for the next story, and it wasn't necessarily all that meaningful. It was just kind of like a little bit of a rest before serious stuff happened, right? So the plotline here is much better. In terms of characters, we get introduced to Koko, Naon, and Oba, and we get them to be quite well thought out and established characters. So I think they did a great job with them. In terms of world building, we get introduced to the Onoimoi agency. We get to see that there's bad peach reactions and good peach reactions. We get to learn about the village. We get to learn about the Shukis and how they are controlled. And in terms of art and fan service, it's a 10 out of 10. It's really, really wonderful. It's ridiculous, but it's so enjoyable to see, right? So I quite like it. I think it works really, really well. And like I said, rating is a 5 out of 5 so far. There really isn't too much going on here that can really get me to finalize my score. So I have to really wait until the next volume to really know what my feelings about this arc are, right? So yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. Let me know if you guys have read this story up to this point, and thank you guys very much for watching. See you guys later.